welcome to our second Health and Humanities Fireside Chat. My name is Pamela Price, and I am the Deputy Director of the Balm in Gilead, and I am excited to have you all with us on this evening. I have been looking forward to this particular Fireside Chat for quite some time, in part because we're talking about mental health today. We're talking about lost generations and unpacking the stigmas of mental health. And that is something that is very, very important to me, and really excited to have you with us again this evening. So, a couple of quick reminders as folks come in. We know you may be watching us on Facebook, you may be joining us from our LinkedIn page or YouTube. However, you are watching and joining us today, we are grateful and thankful to have you with us. We hope that you find tonight's conversation informative. We hope that you'll find it inspiring. And we hope, if more than anything, that it will spark you to take some type of action towards improving your mental health and well-being. So May, for those of you who don't know, is Mental Health Awareness Month. That's also why we wanted to make sure that this month's topic was focused on that. And then also, as we begin to have this conversation, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever your heart's desire, please make sure that you drop and that you share that in the comment section. We will have time for some Q&A at the end, but if it's something that's really, really burning and you do not want to forget, like I sometimes will forget, then go ahead and just drop it in the comment section again, wherever you are joining us from on tonight. So, with that being said, the second reason that I am so excited for tonight's conversation is because I'm getting to have it with someone who I admire, who I respect, her for her, not just her work, her professional work, but just who she is, her heart and her passion and dedication to our communities, and wanting to see them thrive, and wanting to see us as individuals, our families, to be living our best lives. And so please help me give a virtual round of applause to tonight's guest, Miss Jocelyn Cooper.
Hello.
Hey there, Miss Jocelyn.
Hi there. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me and for the great introduction, Pam. Glad to be here with Balm in Gilead.
Yes, no, we are glad and happy to have you. So, for those of you who may not know, so Jocelyn is a program manager, the program manager for the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, which is a program of the Black Women's Health Imperative, another amazing national organization. And if you don't know, you haven't connected, go ahead and go on Google and go to both of those organizations, sign up for their newsletters, because trust me, there is a lot of amazing work happening right now. But I'm going to allow you, Jocelyn, to tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your work, your roles, and then we'll go ahead and get into this conversation.
Sure. So again, thank you so much for having me. As Pam said, my name is Jocelyn Cooper. I'm the program manager for the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, which is a signature initiative under the Black Women's Health Imperative, a very powerful organization that has been in existence for 41 years, striving to advance the health of Black women. And RDDC, or the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, what we do is we extend the lens beyond just Black individuals or BIPOC populations, but we look at diversity from a holistic lens. And so part of my role is leading working groups of great community advocates, patients, caregivers, industry leaders, providers that all work together to create evidence-based tools that help move the cause forward as it relates to rare disease. So for us, diversity isn't just BIPOC, it is also, or Black, Indigenous, people of color, it is also centered around LGBTQ plus, rural communities, socioeconomic status, and more. So Balm in Gilead has been a really great partner and member of the RDDC. So we're super excited to be partnering with them on this initiative, especially because mental health is something that we've always kind of had integrated in our resources, but it's definitely something that in this season we're elevating, especially as it relates to our patients and caregivers.
Yay, I love it. So, real quick, I just wanted to touch on how you really kind of dove into diversity, right? Because, like, that's a word right now where some people are afraid to use it, don't know if they can use it. It's taken on a completely different, or people are trying to reclaim it. So, I really do want to just appreciate you kind of, I think, breaking down that when we think about diversity, it is well beyond race and ethnicity, which
Right.
tends to be where first, people first kind of go to. So thank you for that. And thank you again just for all of the amazing work that our that the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition has been doing. Again, I've been a part of it, I think, since the first steering committee meeting, and I brag any chance I get to anyone because I think it is one of the most well put, well intentioned, and actionable coalitions I have ever been a part of. And so, thank you
Thank
to that and to the leadership at Black Women's Health Imperative. I want to shift gears because we're talking about mental health.
you. Mhm.
Um, and we know that 1 in 5 adults in the United States lives with some form of mental illness. And we know that in many communities, many, as you said, whether we're talking about race and ethnicity, we're talking about from intergenerationals. We know that according to the 2023 CDC report, suicide is the second leading cause of death
Yes.
for individuals ages 10 to 24.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, 10, my twins are 11. So every time I see that stat, I just, I'm like, we got a lot of work to do.
We do.
Um, and some of that work starts with ourselves. So I want to kind of take a step back here because you told us about your role as program manager and all the amazing work that you do. But now I would like you just to tell everyone, who is Jocelyn?
Uh-oh. So, so Jocelyn is, in short, somebody asked me one time, what's my superpower? And I said, I challenge the status quo. I think it's just the way I was designed, but I also have to recognize that it's a byproduct of all the trauma that I've experienced.
Mhm.
So for me, a lot of what I would say about who I am is first and foremost is that I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor of multiple traumas. A lot of my health advocacy work, I have my entire career pretty much has been public health, much like yours, Pam, has been public health center, health center. We worked in HIV. But then a few years ago, I was led to transition to sexual violence centered around assault, anti-trafficking, as well as childhood sexual abuse. And a lot of that was because of my own survivor's journey in those particular areas. You talked about how that age it seems to be getting lower and lower every year as it relates to the age gap, the age variance for suicide. But the reality is, my first attempt for suicide because of the unaddressed trauma was at age 13. And
Same.
so we have to take a look at things from a perspective of like, why is this so prevalent? Why, with more information and access to technology now more than ever, do we seem to know less? Why are basic everyday things like certain conversations not happening? And to your point earlier, stigma is such a big part of that. So one of my like key things to do in all of my advocacy, whether it is centered around rare disease, helping survivors of, trafficking, or CSA, or even helping individuals, living with HIV, all of it centered around making sure that we dismantle stigma. It is such a powerful thing that helps drive blockers,
Yeah.
as it relates to healing and really addressing mental health. People hear the term mental health and they immediately act like it's a dirty phrase. And I'm like, but you don't think physical health is a dirty phrase?
Right. But
Like the same way
nothing about your mind and
right.
mindset. Well,
Exactly. So I'm like, the same way we have to take care of our bodies, in that same regard, we have to take care of our minds. But mental health is more than just our minds, it's also our emotions. And so for
right.
me, I as a person whose family I have to recognize just didn't have the tools. didn't have the awareness from an intergenerational perspective. I had to be the one in my family to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, how do I pay it forward from a perspective of helping people normalize these conversations? And that's why I'm so glad that we're having this here. So for me, being a survivor of, familial trafficking, where my mother actually trafficked me, childhood sexual abuse, as well as a survivor of suicide, like we talked about earlier, all these different things have led me down this road of, okay, this doesn't have to be everyone's journey, but if it is someone else's, it's important for people to know that they're okay. And so much of what's rooted in that stigma is the silence. And that's actually what kind of feeds those negative forces centered around stigma and people not feeling led to share. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation or this chat.
Yes, no, same. And I think again, that's why it's like we were just kindred spirits, again, just kind of connecting and having these shared backgrounds. And I think that's one of the things that when we can have conversations like we're having tonight, what I have found, and I'm sure you probably have as well, is that there are so many others who are dealing with the similar, situations. They had the exact same or again, similar experiences, whether those in our childhood, adulthood, or, whatever it may be. But like you said, we suffer in the silence of it all. We never tell anyone, that, hey, this is something that you have lived through. And I think that is there's a not just a joy, but there's healing, there's empowerment when, like you said, you can put on this hat of saying, no, I survived these things. And then now I'm going to take that and do something again to be able to advocate and to give voice, perhaps to others. And so, again, love it. I know as you were talking, I just kept hearing, I'm a survivor, just because I think that's what we all have survived something. If you have been on this earth long enough, you have survived something. Even our babies, like you said, who are now 10, and wanting or not wanting, but attempting to take their lives, they have gone through and or endured and or are enduring something.
Absolutely.
And when we can come together as a community, as individuals, as families, to be able to figure out how we can better support this, this next generation. I think that is a responsibility that falls with all of us. And so, and again, thank you again for sharing your transparency. For those of you watching, this is going to be a very transparent conversation. And so I'll preface already, if there's anything that Jocelyn and I share that could be triggering, that is not our intent at all. We again want to just create a safe space for us to be able to have these types of dialogues, and do it from a lens of empowerment, and healing, as opposed to, again, I think silence and shame, which is typically how we approach these conversations. So you mentioned and you touched on like trauma, but when we take a step back and we look at, the challenges, right, of mental health across, that spectrum, what do you see as some of our greatest challenges right now with mental health?
The truth is, I think I was having this conversation with someone the other day. I really think the greatest issue that we still suffer with mental health is unaddressed mental health.
Mm.
And it's really interesting to me because you look at the fact that we're in a period from a healthcare landscape where telehealth or telemedicine is kind of booming.
Right.
Everyone is kind of making things more convenient. And so a lot of individuals that work in that psychological or psychiatric space do things virtually to help individuals. This has made it easier access for people to get therapy. But the challenge with it that I've noticed, because I'm a trauma researcher too, and I'm a fellow with AAUW right now, researching this deeply, is that a lot of people are in therapy, but much like worship, they go, they leave, and there's no work in between.
That's, that's true. That's facts. Like,
It's just what's happening. Everybody's setting boundaries,
yeah,
which really means they're just evading accountability and they're evading the ability to like have a hard conversation with someone.
yeah,
You have to, nobody, I don't care, much like a rare disease or any other
mhm,
health condition that we deal with, mental health challenges don't care about how many degrees you have, what zip
right,
code you live in, how many zeros are in your bank account. Ultimately, we have to do work beyond the safe or dedicated space for, like therapy or
yeah,
other interventions or group support. There's a lot of work where we do. I always tell people the best way I can describe it is something that I learned with one of my former employers. The language is we have to apply healing
mhm,
tools. You have
yeah,
to do the work in between. It's not easy. You literally just have to do work. And I think a lot of times is that there's still culturally among
mhm,
certain populations a huge amount of stigma where people are still using very disparaging language around mental
right,
health, saying that people are crazy.
right,
Um, or, a lot of people look at me strange when I talk about my journey as a survivor. And I've had several people, even people in church, that have told me, like, oh, don't tell people that, people will judge you and they'll think you're crazy. And I was like, I'm literally called to share because I need the other person that has experienced this to know they're not alone. And
yeah,
so the stigma is the still one of the most significant issues, but it's people having challenges with doing work
yes,
on the therapeutic space, or like therapeutic interventions require that we practice them.
right,
And most of the time, anything that we have to grow and develop in, especially as it relates to healing or just general
mhm,
personal development, we are required to practice it. And
yeah,
that means we have to put things into implementation. And so it's just a pattern that I've noticed, something that has literally come out in my research and in my personal
mhm,
life in recent months that I've noticed with people just not going to therapy every week, but they're
yeah,
not, when it's time to actually practice the tools in space, they use certain excuses as a defense mechanism not to
right,
do the hard work. And so
right,
it's very interesting. I'm really excited. I'm such an advocate of therapy because so many of those components saved my life. But
yeah,
it's a lot of hard work that has to be done on your own beyond that therapeutic space that requires
right,
us to embrace a lot of uncomfortable, like discomfort and uncomfortable spaces and situations internally.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, I love, first of all, I love that you're calling us all to task, right? That's what these conversations are about. Okay. If you don't get uncomfortable during this next 40-ish minutes or so, then Jocelyn and I probably have not had a real conversation. Because, like you said, it is about the work. Like, the best relationship and healthiest and strongest relationship we should have in our lives is going to be that we have with ourselves, right? And that's where the
Mhm.
digging in, the digging deep, holding that mirror up in front of yourself can be so challenging. And you do hear people, kind of use, like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm setting boundaries and I'm not having that conversation. Okay, well, did you process and ask yourself, is that a conversation that you should have? And
That part.
maybe it's a question of if you're ready. Now, if you're not ready and you're not prepared, that's one thing. Just to
Right.
completely say, "Oh, I've set this little boundary box, and anything that's outside of this boundary box, I'm not touching. I'm not, looking at. I'm not going to pay attention to." And like you said, that really, I think, thwarts our ability to really heal, especially when we
Mhm.
know that a significant amount of us are living with some type of trauma. It could be psychological trauma, it could be physical trauma, it could be both. And we've got to make sure, like you said, that we're doing the unpacking, but then doing the work. If you're gonna waste that money, not waste it, but if you're gonna spend that money on a copay to see your therapist or whomever it is that you may be seeing, I
Right.
know I would feel some kind of way if I'm not putting some tools into practice that they are giving me when you find those of value. So thank you
Sure.
for I think shining a light on that. And then for for the faith folks. So the Balm and Gilead, we do faith-based work. All of our programming has some type of faith-based component to it. And so I know before you and I have had a conversation about faith and its role in healing, but you touched on it a little bit. And also sometimes, again, if our faith and other community organizations and individuals, if they are not prepared adequately to support individuals in having these conversations. So can you talk a little bit about one, just the role that faith has played in your journey of healing as a survivor, but then also just even shining lights on moments again where you've seen that it has been perhaps a deterrent, and maybe even enabling some of the stigma that we are still experiencing.
Sure. So faith has been, even currently is, early on was a significant part of my healing journey. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't even have the language to figure out what I was doing at that time, because we're talking like 15 years ago when I really started acknowledging my sexual abuse as a child and what had happened, and making the decision to do things differently because I was just tired of being angry. I was tired of being enraged all the time. I was like, God, there's got to be something different in this. This ain't it.
Right.
And so for me, my journey actually began at home. It didn't begin in connection to like a church or worship center like it did later on. But I will say, like, it was just such a beautiful time. It was a challenging time, a painful time, those beginning stages where for me, it was just recognizing that there's something more to who I am, even though I don't know what that is. And it all was centered around making sure that I explored that instead of letting all the negative things that had happened to me define who I was.
Wow.
Because that's where I had sat for the first like 28 years of my life. I had sat in a place where I was like, this is it. I literally used language like I'm damaged. I'm broken.
Wow.
Because all I saw was, I mean, literally based on how I grew up, I won't even say the denomination, but where I grew up in church, I'm from the South, from Atlanta. And I was told that some of these things were happening to me because I was cursed.
Wow. Wow.
I can't not say that. And so a lot of what we experience from a mental health perspective as it relates to it, not saying from a causality point that, certain things happen and then it makes us have mental health issues or challenges. What it is that we are experience certain things, certain messaging, certain seeds are planted, and then we don't have the tools or even information to navigate that. I know 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old women that don't have the language to describe how they feel. They cannot identify their emotions. They just don't know because they were never given. It's a privilege, truly, to be able to sit in a space where you can identify your emotions. Now, some of us might be like, girl, whatever, that's too. No, I've been doing this for over a decade, just this trauma work. And I'm telling you, people are still living out what Dr. Joy DeGruy so brilliantly calls the post-traumatic slave syndrome in certain communities.
Yes. 100%.
Yes, it's literally people just in survival mode and not giving themselves permission to heal, not giving themselves permission to see things differently. And so for me, I challenged the status quo because I chose to do it differently. And everybody was always like, even now, people are like, you just got to be different. You can't go with the go. And I'm like, this is not, we can do it differently. It doesn't have to be wrong because it's different.
Yes.
I think that's one of the big things, whether we're in, like a general health, public health space, whether it's a faith-based environment, it's really important for us to understand all the possibilities. For me, it was recognizing that the creator made 8 billion people.
Yeah.
And the creator didn't make 8 billion people for us to be one or two things.
Right. That part.
So we've got to embrace that what works for Jocelyn won't necessarily work for Pam. what works for Tony won't necessarily work for Linda, and all of that is
Right.
okay. And just being able to embrace it differently, as it relates to. So for me, I think that truly that's
Mm.
why a lot of my work had to be done on my own
Yeah.
before I even connected to a ministry, because I had such respect for my elders in ministry,
Hmm.
that they didn't have, let me be clear, um, when I was an adult and connected to a ministry, they didn't have bad intentions.
Right. Right.
They just didn't know. And so
Yeah.
they again didn't have the tools, didn't have the information or knowledge. And so some things were dismissed. I think at times people were dealing with their own shame, and
Right.
maybe
Right.
me sharing my story was a trigger for them. Um,
Yeah.
and not wanting to have to face that. So that's why, for me, the community and village piece is so key, while also simultaneously honoring the fact that some of this is going to have to be alone. You have to do it with the right trusted members of your village, depending on
Right.
what it is. So it might just be your therapist for a period of time. It might
Hmm.
just be, a pastor, a trusted mentor for a period of time, but it's going to be a little piece of everybody along the way. People,
Yeah.
it might be your support group,
Right.
it just depends. But for me, all of those things have incorporated pieces of my faith journey. Highlighting
Hmm.
the fact that I am a believer, but also honoring the fact that God made these 8 billion people. Let me partner the genius that lives in some of them to create
Right.
healing tools for us. So it's me partnering my faith with my
Yes.
like practical healing side. I'm actually writing my book, and one of the things that I say in my book is that what saved me, because people ask me this all the time,
Hmm.
like, how do you live with all the things you've been through? Um,
Yeah.
and I say it's couch and altar.
Yes.
It's literally
Yes.
therapy, applying the healing tools, but it's also my faith-based journey and applying certain aspects and practices there. It's not one thing,
Yes.
it's not even two, it's just a bunch of stuff.
Yes. It's that toolbox, family. Like it really is all those things that you mentioned. And really, I think again, if you think about it, like, one of the scriptures that I love is that faith without works is dead. That is the work, right? Being on that couch, talking things out with your therapist, putting those things into practice, spending time alone with yourself, processing your thoughts and every emotion that you feel, and not, washing away some, and you want to relegate these to, well, I can never feel this, or I don't want to acknowledge that feeling, or like you said, I can't even put a word to it. It's funny. I'm thinking of a really good dear friend of the Bomb and Gilead, Sheila Battle, and we had her a couple few years ago, on a similar conversation. And one of the things that she often points to individuals is that if you go and you look online, there's a feeling wheel. It's a
Mhm.
huge, huge wheel that has just, again, all the language for feelings that we
Yeah.
can feel, right? But when we are asked, how are you doing? Or even when we ask, well, how do you feel?
Mhm.
Or how are you feeling? One of our go-to words is, oh, I'm fine. If you guys go and look up that feeling wheel, fine is nowhere on it.
It's not.
Nowhere. And I'm talking about, it's got a long list. This wheel is huge. It's got feelings and emotions maybe you've never experienced.
Right.
But fine, which is the one we go to all the time,
Mine is
is
not on
not
I've
it's
never
not on
seen
that
it. I've
wheel.
seen a lot of emotion wheels, even help create one, and that was not a word on there.
No. Okay. Our
So
bodies are fine. Um, my hair is fine. Okay. But
yeah.
yes, how I feel, not so much. So thank you for that. So again, yeah, language has to be one of those tools as well. We have to be able to be equipped to speak to pain, trauma, emotions, experiences, and speak to them, like you said, in a way that allows us to be able to walk in them, to use them as stepping stones, use them as, the foundations that we can build great and amazing lives on, as opposed to the things that we feel like I'm going to be buried underneath these things.
Right.
And so I love that. And I also love that you mentioned the village, right? Because I know for both you and I, so a lot of our trauma came from within our houses, right? It came from the people who were supposed to love us most and protect us the most, and make sure that we were safe and well and healthy. And when that doesn't happen, and they're the source of, this trauma, and the source of, suicide attempts, and the source of, lots of negativity, and a reason why we spend a lot of time on the couches later in life. Um having that village that's external, giving ourselves that permission to say, I can go find other individuals who don't have to necessarily be family members. They don't have to, be people who you even grew up with. Um, and I love that, because again, conversations like this help us sometimes find our village, right? I've been
Absolutely.
on, informal, conversations like this, where a group of folks just kind of, hey, look, we're just going to hop on a Zoom, and it's just kind of like a free for all. We're just going to get together and then and talk about, how life is going right now. And it's in some of those conversations that you really, like you said, you just see that, like, wow, you're not in this by yourself. Like, oh my God, or didn't know you were going through that. Because we get really good at wearing those masks. We get really good, like you said, about just kind of, not wanting to confront anything, keeping those walls and keeping that guard up. And, after a while, even the best mask will crack, family. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So I want to shift just a little bit, because we've talked about, again, I think just some of the challenges. But when we go back and when we think about, again, whether it's the alarming suicide rates, when we think about that, over 30% of children, of adolescents, so individuals under the ages of 18, they are not getting mental health screenings or depression assessments when they are going and getting their primary wellness visits, which is alarming, because, like you said, they're getting everything else done when we take our children in to be seen: blood pressure, height, weight, eyes. They're checking everything. But about 30% of our kids are not being asked mental health related, or having an assessment done to assess their mental health. Um, so we know that there's definitely some barriers to that. What do you see as some of the barriers that prevent, outside of stigma, that prevent individuals from, either an individual from seeking care, seeking treatment, or even just, let's say, maybe as a parent, that may be preventing a parent from, wanting to get their child the help that they may need? What do you see as some of those biggest barriers?
Some of it that I've observed, because when I was a HIV program director, we did a lot of work in schools, a lot of HIV screenings and testings in the high schools. We would have like
Mm,
screening, health screening days. Because I was in Southwest Georgia, we lived in the area that dealt with a lot of that. And a lot of
mm.
times, what I found is I went there to do a HIV screening, but I ended up doing a mental health screening. And the
Wow. Yeah.
storyline was persistent. It was, I can't talk to my mom about this.
Wow.
I can't talk to my dad about this. He'll kill me. I can't
Ugh.
mention this to my pastor or my grandma. I can't. It
Mm,
was so one of the things that I know me and my close friend and fellow advocate Annie always talked about, just in general outreach and education, is whether you're a parent or a trusted loved one, adult, a bonus parent like me, or whatever you are to a child, you
mm.
have to make sure that you keep open lines of communication with those kids no matter what.
Yes.
And that they are literally learning more, even from just like a statistical perspective. They're all learning more through observation than by
Yeah.
what you say. But they're also paying attention to what you say too. We have to be careful about what we say about other people, to other people, whether we're on the phone or we're talking to someone in person or whatever it might be. They're absorbing everything, and they will
Yeah.
bring something up to you 10 years later and say, I remember at the barbecue and picnic, y'all was picking on Auntie Gloria because she fill in the blank. And
Right.
that's why they didn't tell you something.
Mm.
So, from a mental health perspective, if you have someone in your family that maybe has a diagnosis of depression or bipolar, and your child heard you call them weak, if you
Right.
heard a family member, one young lady told me a couple of years ago that, she never shared certain things with her mom, and her mom kept telling me, I just don't, Jocelyn, I just don't understand why she didn't say anything. And the daughter just screamed out, because you said that someone so and so took their life, they were weak.
Wow.
And the mom didn't even, she was trying to recall saying that. On the back end, she said, I probably did say it, but I wasn't referencing my child. And so
Mm.
they're still, though you were talking about someone else or an adult, they still were applying it to their own life.
Yeah.
Those lines, those gaps in communication have got to be closer, where we really allow children of all ages to like have a voice, where they're
Yeah.
able to kind of like develop their language, express themselves, because a lot of
Yeah.
this is the suppression of who you can be, certain cultural language or things of stay in a child's place,
Yeah.
spoken to, things like that. And then when they're abused or they're
Right.
experiencing some trauma on the back end, you might say, well, why didn't you tell me?
Right.
I, I'm like, lady, what you want me to do? I didn't feel comfortable. I was
Right.
afraid, terrified. I was scared. You told me don't say
Yeah.
anything, that kind of stuff. And so
Yeah.
you have to normalize conversation. It is so hard to have conversations with your children about ways to protect them from, say, sexual abuse or things of that nature.
Right.
It's classes and courses out there to do it. Like I still teach some of them now on a
Yeah.
volunteerism level, but it is something that's necessary. I've literally heard parents say, um, like, oh, my child is 8. They're not even thinking about sex. And I want to be very clear to say, whether it's mental health or it's sexual abuse or them just being harmed or mistreated, it's
Right.
important that the 2-year-old, the 1-year-old, as their language is developing, that they start
Right.
learning how to express themselves or even identify if
Yeah.
something is wrong. And so we don't want to put it in a box of, let's just wait until they're older because we feel
Right.
like we'll be more comfortable. It's important for us to equip them early on. But that's the persistent issue that I've seen, where
Mm-hmm.
the kids are afraid to talk to their parents, but the parents are also afraid to talk to the kids. But a lot of times it could just be because the parents don't have the tools. But I've
Yeah.
really seen in situations where someone was an RN, had the language training, everything,
Yeah.
was would talk to everybody else's kid, but was terrified to talk to her own. So so it's still important that we normalize those conversations where
Yeah.
the doors and windows of communication are open in such a way where if you need to take a moment once your child
Yeah.
shares something with you to go collect yourself and get yourself together privately,
Yes.
do that and then come back and continue the discussion.
Yes. And I have had to do that with my oldest. Like there's been a few things that, I'm happy she said it, but in the moment I was like, you know, I've got to process that
Yeah.
and not just give you my knee jerk, response. And I think, yeah, like you said, it's those lines of communication that's so important because I think from whether it's bullying, that our kids, I think sometimes when we think, the bomb has been doing, work across our roadmaps and really looking again as this health conversation across the generations, right? And then kind of like you said, it's the humanity of it, right? So,
Mhm.
there's a reason a child, or let's just say even any other adult who might have been thinking about sharing something with you when they hear you say that one, because again, that even though it wasn't directed towards them,
Mhm.
that gives them a perception of how you are seeing human beings, period.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to, like you said, make sure, I think that whether it's in our homes, our workspaces, our churches, our mosques, our temples, wherever it is that we're interacting and engaging with other individuals, like you said, it's about that space. It's
Mhm.
about not being reckless with our words and our language. I know as someone who lives with bipolar disorder, I take great offense when I hear that just thrown out with caution, ooh, she bipolar, ooh,
Right.
um, because like you said, it puts such a one, it gives a false perception of what the disorder truly is. But like you said, it also doesn't make me feel comfortable as someone living with it that I want to come and talk to you about something that I may be dealing with, an issue that I may be having or experiencing. And that's again, I think one of the things that we want to make sure that we are working towards for those people that we have connections and interactions with.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and then outside of that too, so really thinking about the work for the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition. So, like you said, there's been this new, which I'm so excited for, of wanting to integrate, again, the language and the tools and the resources around mental health. Can you talk a little bit about for what those families who are they have a child or a spouse or a partner or someone who has, this rare disease, perhaps no cure, like most of our rare diseases do not have cures. Some maybe not even have adequate treatments
Right.
for them. And a significant number of rare diseases actually do affect children. Um, what do you see right now that those families need? Is it the same as like others, or do you feel that like because there's that element of that rare disease, that there's some additional supports or some additional barriers and challenges that even those families might be facing?
It's definitely some additional barriers and challenges that individuals like living with rare disease and their families face, whoever their support system or care team is. It's really centered around recognizing first that when people have certain types of healthcare conditions, it literally has to be addressed holistically because
Mhm,
it doesn't just impact them, it impacts everyone. So, for
mhm,
example, I have a child that's really ill. This is pre diagnosis. I have a child that's really ill, and we're going through the diagnostic journey trying to figure out what's going on. The doctor keeps medically gaslighting me and telling
mhm.
me that, oh, they'll grow out of it, oh, they're just sick, oh, they'll get over it, we'll come back in 6 months and we'll figure it out. Meanwhile, you all are in and out of the ER trying to figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
So all of those little bitty things, the parent or the loved one having to take additional time off work, having to
Yeah,
care for that child, or let's say it's an adult, having to care for that adult as well, if it's their partner,
yeah.
or their loved one. It's so many layers to it.
Mhm.
If I'm taking time off work, am I missing income that supports our
Yeah,
household? All these different elements are a key piece of why it's so important. And then you add the mental health component in it. We
yeah.
all know that if we have a cold, we got an attitude,
Right.
okay? If seriously, like you got the flu I've seen people in the last month or so, month to 6 weeks,
With
Pam,
allergy, yeah.
losing it about this pollen, okay?
Yes.
Just losing it about this pollen. So imagine living with a rare disease or a rare condition, or just having something going on with your body, and you nor
Yeah.
your loved ones have a clue as to what's happening, and you're not getting the support from the very place that you think you should, which is the healthcare
Mm.
providers. It's
Yeah.
extremely frustrating, and it doesn't just take a toll on your physical health, it also takes a toll on your mental health, and it
Yeah.
also takes a toll on the mental health of your household. You can have
Yeah.
caregivers that are not just your parents or your partner, but your older siblings. It's so many layers
Yeah.
to it. And so it really is something that's kind of nuanced and impacts the
Mhm.
entire family from a, everyday psychosocial perspective, whether we
Yeah.
talk about, again, that physical component, getting everyday care to fiscally, financially, how are we taking
Yeah.
care of this household? Who's going to work? Because I can't, they need care. And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily feel comfortable leaving my child or loved one in certain spaces because they have a very, unique care list that requires a
Right.
lot of attentive and care. Like I know some
Yeah.
people that don't even get the rest that they need when they talk about embracing something like respite care, where you get that little,
Yeah.
because they don't trust anyone to take care of their loved one as well as they would.
Right.
And you kind of understand that. So when you talk about any medical condition, some of us are so familiar with that, having aging parents.
Yeah.
Take that and add other layers to it if you're dealing with a younger child or a younger partner
Mhm.
or spouse or loved one that's living with a rare condition. And then, the average diagnosis time is somewhere between 5 to 7 years, often
Wow.
because the healthcare professionals may not be equipped with the right
Yeah.
information or awareness to address or even consider that, hey, this might be a
Yeah.
rare disease condition, or let me get you to a specialist or something of that nature. That's why it's just so important, whether it's a healthcare provider, a social worker on a care team, a nurse,
Yeah.
a community health worker. We have to normalize these conversations with everyone because,
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with a friend saying, hey, I just learned about this particular rare disease condition, and I'm wondering if this is something you should get screened for.
Wow. Yeah.
I've noticed you've had an issue. So often it may not
Wow.
necessarily be neglect. It could just
Mhm.
be a lack of exposure or awareness. But
Yeah.
as village members, and I do feel like providers, caregivers, family members, we have to advocate for individuals
Yes.
that are going through these things in a different kind of way, making sure that they're getting all the information, making sure that they're getting all the options, and so
Yes.
that all things are being addressed. And then after you deal with the immediacy of the health concern, then
Yeah.
you have to start addressing those other things, especially like the mental health component. It's so important for us not to forget that, because it
Yeah.
definitely like takes a toll on individuals for sure.
Yeah. No. First of all, again, like I love just how when you were talking, I kept thinking that we I'm traveling this week, so you hear all the little announcements and things like that in the airport, and you see the little billboards, see something, say something, right? And I just that came to mind when you were talking, because I think that's needed, right? When we see it could be a physical change, it could be a behavioral change, could be a mood or energy shift from the people who are closest to us. We want to make sure that, like you said, we've got, lines of communication open enough that we can say something, that we can, and maybe again, they can't put into words, or it's nothing that they have observed themselves. But maybe you mentioning to say, hey, look, I noticed that, something is, seems a little off with you. You don't maybe seem as focused as you usually do. Could be your gait. My husband is one of the first people to notice when something is not quite right. And he does not always have the right word. So he may be like, you don't look well. I'm like, well, explain. Because, can you give me a little bit more to go on other than, I don't look well, like, so
Right.
I can really, know. But again, I am appreciative,
Mhm.
of him saying, hey, I may be seeing something that you're not seeing, wife, and just want to bring it to your attention that, and again, I love that. So we have a few more minutes here, and we always and again, if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you would like to ask us, please make sure that you drop those in the comment section. I see a couple of thumbs up. I see Frank is joining us from Newark, New Jersey. I'm nearby. I'm up in New York right now, Frank. So thank you so much for joining us. Um, but before we hop off, Jocelyn, what would be the top? I'm going to say top. What would just be three things that you would, three actionable things that you would want people after tonight to do? Kind of like we said, the things we want to put into practice that will help give us or help improve our mental well-being, maybe help get us, further down that healing journey. But what are three things that you would want to encourage people to put into practice in regards to their mental health?
I think the first thing that I often tell people in general, because it's something I had to learn on my own through my healing journey, and I try my best to practice it every day, is that you are the expert of you. For most of us, And if you have a loved one that maybe has like an intellectual disability or something of that nature, it's a little different with them. But generally speaking, most of us have to learn ourselves in a way where we can identify it first. Sometimes
Mhm.
it is easier from the outside looking in, but it's important for us to become experts on ourselves so that we can feel when something's a little off.
Yes.
So that you can have develop the language to say, I'm not feeling off. I need to address, I'm feeling a little off. I need to address this, or I need some time to myself. I need space to
Yeah.
process. It doesn't have to be I always tell people it doesn't have to get to a 10 for you to address stuff. You can start at 1. You can start at 0,
Right.
really. You can just say like, okay, today is not a day. I was just telling I was like, today was kind of a Tuesday flavored Monday, a Monday flavored Tuesday. You know,
Yeah.
it was busier than anticipated. And so, in the morning time, it had me shifted a little bit and I had to make an adjustment.
Yeah.
But I knew that was my anxiety
Mm.
because I've become an expert on me. So I,
Yes.
so I had to have a conversation with myself.
Yes. And
And
that's good. Talk to yourself.
please, please talk to yourself, meditate. For me, it was prayer, but it was also meditation. I did some affirmations. I had to navigate it with it. I had to walk through it, but it was taking that time to know myself, the years of work to know myself better than anyone else knows me, in an effort to get what I needed in that moment so I could shift. Is it always that way? Absolutely not. But
Right.
as you grow and keep exercising that muscle, it's just like going to the gym. It gets stronger and you get better at doing it day by day. One of the other things that I would say is just be willing to do it differently.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
may be the one called out in your family, in your village, in order to like shift and make a change and do things differently. This may
Yeah.
require you to learn different things or different approaches, stuff that other people are calling weird, but it's life saving for you. You got
Yeah.
to be willing to consider. That's one of the things that I always say. Just consider, because life is never
Yeah.
black and white. It's always gray. And
Yes.
again, 8 billion people, y'all. Like, it's always gray. And so it's really important to recognize um that there's so much that we have to, no matter what our age is, no matter what our expertise is, that we have to
Yeah.
remain teachable and open and have a
Yes.
willingness to learn, an eagerness to learn. And then one of the key things that I often talk about, because honestly my audiences are very diverse, whether you talk RDDC or my personal advocacy organization, but in general, I always tell people recognize the role that your family culture has played in
Yes.
how you think. Because depression is not just sadness, anxiety is
Yeah.
not just bad nerves, bipolar is not they crazy. All of these things are legitimate diagnoses or challenges. And it's
Yes.
important that we're not dismissive. So it
Yes.
requires us to kind of step our game up in a different way, that we first have to become experts on ourselves, but then we
Mhm.
also have to acknowledge the role that our family cultures have played in who we become.
Yes.
And that family culture may also be your church family,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It may also be your family. I like to say family of origin, but it also could
Mhm.
be your adopted family, your
Yeah.
chosen.
Chose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Mm.
it's exploring all of those things. Those are kind of the top 3 as it relates to from a foundational perspective. I think so
Yeah.
many of us are still starting there, and I think the
Mhm.
key thing to recognize is once you explore that,
Yeah.
there's still space and opportunity for you to revisit that. For some of us,
Yeah.
depending on where we are in our healing, you might need to revisit it every week, every month, every quarter in the beginning, and then later
Yeah.
on down the line, it's every 4 to 6 months, every year.
Yeah.
It just depends, but you have to
Yeah.
create a journey in space with the help of trusted individuals, whether that's your therapist, your mentor, your pastor, all of them,
Mhm. Yes.
that where it works, right, where it works well for you. That's going to be extremely key and important to make sure that you're kind of maximizing your healing opportunities. We've got to make sure
Yes.
that we have realistic expectations around it, and having boundaries is very important. It's been such a key part of my healing journey, but it's certainly not shutting everybody out, because everyone
Right.
isn't trying to harm you. So it's
Yeah.
extremely important for you to become the expert on you, so that you know how to help yourself better than
Yes.
and get started, so that you have the confidence and trust in your own gut to say, this is off. I know I need to call my therapist. This is off. Let
Right.
me call my good girlfriend, Pam. This is off.
Yeah.
You know, and so those are kind of the things from a foundational level that's going to be really important for us to do. And it's on an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
It is not a terminal degree in healing.
Thank you. That part. That
Yeah.
part. There's always going to be some part of you, some part of us that will need some work.
Yeah.
That in, that lies that is the journey. Like you say, yeah, this is not a terminal. We don't get to get a t-shirt, after 5, 10,
Right.
15, 20, however
Sounds
many
good.
years. Yeah. It
Sounds
would
good,
be
but not really.
it would be nice if that was the case. I'd have a drawer full of t-shirts, but it doesn't work that way. So again, I cannot thank you enough. Again, I appreciate your transparency. Again, I appreciate your willingness to use the things that you have survived in life, to be able to help others. Again, I love that you have poured it not just into the work with the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, but I also want, while we still got a few minutes, I also would love for you just to share and talk about your personal work outside of the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, because I know that is amazing, and I would love if you would just share again how folks can connect with you, and what that work is, because I do think that that's important as well.
Oh, cool. Thank you. So I started a personal advocacy brand in like 2020, called I Am More, and it's EYE and more. It's centered around the fact that we have to have a developmental understanding that our traumas don't define us. It's just a chapter in our story. It's not our entire story. It's not the entire book. And so for me, it was the one of the key things that I have on my website, iammore.com, is we spend so much time only believing in God that we forget about the God within us. Part of that is because we are living from a space of all the negative messaging traumas, whether it's the one family member or the mother wound that we're dealing with, or it's the negative things that we may have heard in other spaces. What we see on
Mm-hmm.
social media, we didn't even delve into that,
Yeah.
but that's serving a huge component on the negative
Yeah.
or challenges with mental health that people have, trying to prove themselves or live up to false expectations or someone else's highlight
Right.
reel. Extremely important.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just I run a couple of support groups to help survivors of trauma. But also part of what I do is help train agencies that are in a trauma informed way that
Love it.
need support, the leaders of these agencies, so that they stop re-traumatizing trauma survivors. Because again,
Right.
like we talked about earlier, going to the doctor, you might go to the courthouse, you might people dealing with domestic violence going to get a TPO, and the
Right.
judge or the liaison or advocate there kind of using shaming language as they
Yeah.
fill out the paperwork. All of those things actually set people back from a mental health perspective, and it just
Yeah.
re-traumatizes them. So now they don't trust anyone and they don't feel safe, so they peace out on everybody. So really,
Yeah.
that's a part of what I do with I Am More. And that work kind of bleeds into everything that I do, whether it's HIV or RDDC, like just making sure that people living with rare diseases or other conditions, like take care of yourself, give
Yeah.
yourself grace, but also give yourself the opportunity to rest, normalize
Yes.
that, and stop feeding into the certain cultures, again recognizing
Yeah.
the role that culture plays in things. It's okay if you're not strong. how
Right.
about, how
Right.
about that? That it's totally okay if you're not. It's okay not to be okay. And we all need some downtime. We all have things to
Yes.
process, as you said. And so that's a key part of that work that I do. It's kind of twofold: peer support from a like personal advocacy. I understand certain aspects of your journey perspective, but then also training corporations, organizations, and leaders in the community to make sure that they have more refined best practices to deal with trauma survivors, because the stats show that over 70 individuals have experienced a traumatic event that's of any kind by the age of 16. That's before you're even an adult.
Wow.
And so if we look at it from that perspective, everyone's traumatized to some degree.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
just, keep in mind, that's just what's reported. That's not counting all the
Wow.
unreported things that we don't know about, because those lines of communication are not necessarily open where we feel safe to share. So it's all about us doing this work together as a village. I'm so grateful to Balm and Gilead for hosting the Fire Chat series, but just keeping this conversation going with a number of different survivors of different types of traumas, different type of health matters, because it's important that we address this from every angle, because everybody has a unique experience. And I know it's going to
Yes.
make an impact or difference, but know that you don't have to be a public health professional or practitioner like Pam or I. You can do your part in your community, like today,
Yes.
in your family,
Yes.
in your sphere of influence. Now you might end up like me and be, oh, she's so different. Oh, here she come with another speech, or they see me
Be different.
already know.
Be the different one.
but I'm also the one they call when they got questions.
Right. Right.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's what it's about.
We didn't want to hear about it at the cookout or the family reunion when I was trying to have this conversation collectively with everybody. But now that, yes, like
Yeah.
you said, now that you're on 10, I was trying to talk to you when you were at 2.
Right. You don't have to wait
So
until you're in a crisis, but I'm still glad that you called.
yes, exactly. Yeah. But what is it? And what can I do? Uh
Right.
So no, I love that. And again, thank you so much. So again, family, if you want to learn more about Jocelyn's work with I Am More, it is IEYE More. Please visit and check her out, and just learn more about how you can stay connected with her. You can go to RDDC dot. Is it shortened out now to RDDC.org?
Not yet, but it's rarediseasediversity.org.
Okay, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
To learn more about how you can get involved with the coalition. Again, there's room for everybody. There's a patient and caregivers group. There's a provider group. There's a policy and government. Like, if we got all the groups, so there is
Yes.
space for you to be able to connect and get involved and get engaged. And again, I just want to thank you so much. One of the things that Jocelyn just said kind of ties into another announcement that I want to share with the group, and that is, for those of you who don't know, the Balm and Gilead, we are right smack dab in the middle of our Healthy Churches Roadmap Tour for 2025, our 5-city tour. We have got 3 down, we have 2 more to go. So if you are in, near, or around Columbia, South Carolina, please come on down and join us on May the 31st. We have the pleasure of having the Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant serve as a co-host with our visionary and illustrious CEO and founder, Dr. Pernessa Seal, who will be leading us. I'm telling you, these have been amazing. They're chock full of just information and engagement and tools and resources and conversation. And then our last one will be in Baltimore, Maryland on June the 28th. These events are free, they're open to the public. We have vendors that are available providing resources, tools. Some vendors at some of the events are offering free screenings to us families. So again, this is a labor of love, but we do this because this is important. This whole theme for our roadmap this year is forwarding the Black health agenda, and it really is looking at our own personal health agenda. We actually have put together a plan asking you some key questions, to Jocelyn's point of how do we start with myself first? Because if we are not well, really it just stops there. It doesn't matter what else you're trying to be, whoever else you're trying to be. If you are not well, nothing that you're going to put your mind to, put your hands to, is going to flourish and thrive the way that it could. And then if you have not already signed up, because again, we are two fireside chats in, we have many more to go. And our next fireside chat is going to be on June the 12th. We'll be coming back to you in the evening again on June the 12th at 7 p.m. Same place, same time, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We got you covered. And we have another just, he's a friend of the Bomb and Gilead. He's a dear friend of mine, that we set on different advisory boards and coalitions as well. Mr. Oya Gilbert. He is the founder of Health, Hope, and Hip Hop Foundation. And I'm telling you, family, you do not want to miss it. Oya is dynamic. And this one is for the fellas, right? This is going to be for the fellas. I'm excited because our men, your health matters. And we want to make sure that we are carving out time and space for you to have those conversations that we know our men need to be having. And I'm happy to have Oya with us for that. And then again, we've got another chat coming in July, August, and September. So again, you can sign up and register for all of the fireside chats at one time. But if not, again, we will always be somewhere with you again on social media, again on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. So I want to thank you, family, for taking up your time this evening to be with us. Again, we hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. I know I have. And make sure that you connect with us at the Bomb and Gilead, connect with Jocelyn at the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, and more importantly, connect with each other, right? Call up somebody. Think about a conversation you've been putting off. Somebody who you don't put like, oh, I ain't got time. I don't do that. That's in my boundaries. Unblock put the boundaries down for a minute and think about a conversation. Think about a relationship, perhaps. Think about an instance, an experience, or something that it has been bothering. It's been sticking with you. It's still just hanging around you like weight. And let's see if we can't start unpacking some of that. So thank you again, family, and have a great, great, great rest of your week. Love you.